Hey y'all, it's Ashley at Bookish Room, and I am back with another video. Today I'll be doing my weekly wrap-up. As I've stated in other videos, I'm doing now like this whole weekly wrap-up thing because it gives me the opportunity to talk about my books a little bit longer, and I can make a longer video without my monthly wrap-up being super long. I may end up doing a monthly wrap-up where I go over everything that I read and over some statistics, but in order for me to kind of like do miniature reviews and kind of talk about the books, I want to be able to do these weekly wrap-ups. So unfortunately, this was not a good reading week for me because I was not in a good emotional and mental place this week, and you'll see that in my weekly vlog. I had a tough time filming this week just for my weekly vlog. There was a lot going on. There still is a lot going on with me emotionally, mentally, and coming to grips with being pregnant, being single. It's a lot right now, and I don't feel like I'm in a place right now, a level of comfort to talk about all the details about what I'm going through and the situation that I'm in right now. So I will save that for another time. But this week I did end up reading four books. I wish. I only read two. I read one literary fiction book and one comic book, and the literary fiction book that I picked up, I actually had been listening to it on audio for a little while, and is one of the fastest times that I've ever done listening to audio because the book itself was phenomenal. And in this review you kind of see like my questioning of saying that this book is good. It's good, but then I don't want to say it's weird. I'll have to go into more detail. So that book is Here Comes the Sun, and it's by Nicole Dennis Ben, and she is a Jamaican author, and she writes about Jamaican characters on Voices, which was great for me. This month is Read Caribbean because it's American Caribbean Heritage Month. And I definitely have some works that I wanted to read by Jamaican authors. If you guys didn't know, my dad's side of the family is Jamaican and English, so that's part of who I am culturally. So it's great to pick up works written by Jamaican authors, and I love listening to them on audiobooks because I am the only one on my dad's side of the family that, you know, patois is just not my thing. I can't do it. I can't go back and forth. I have family members who can go back and forth between just a regular American dialect and then the patois dialect, and I can't do it. So I suck. So I love listening, even with my family, I love just sitting down and listening to them talk. So listening to an audio is just a great experience for me. Here Comes the Sun is about a couple of main characters, but it mainly focuses on two sisters, Margot and Thandie, who both live in Jamaica. Margot is very set on creating a new life and a new world for her sister Thandie because of the fact that Thandie is supposed to be the gateway out for the family. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that before, where there's one family member who is solely responsible for going to school, getting an education, and getting the family out of poverty. Like, the family invests everything that they have into this one individual to get them out of their current situation. And it's that same kind of thing with Margot and Thandie. Margot and her mother, Dolores, very much so are dependent upon Thandie's education and her ability to go far in life to pull them out of their situation that they're in poverty. This book is trigger warnings for rape as well. Yeah, I would say more so trigger warnings for rape. There is quite a bit of prostitution that also takes place in this book. There's hefty discussions related to racism, colorism, poverty, and I think the one that interested me the most, of course, being a person of color, is the colorist aspect of it, where you have Thandie, who is very ashamed to be of a darker complexion, so she does what is known as skin lightening, and it doesn't happen so much here in the US. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but it is something that's very frowned upon here in the US. I think the US is as a whole, amongst black people, I can only speak for black people, are trying to do a better job about uplifting people of the community that are of a darker complexion and not always associating light skin, curly hair, pretty, you know what I'm saying, like more European features as beautiful, whereas dark-skinned men and dark-skinned women can be beautiful as well. In other countries, it's not so much. I know that Jamaica has had an uphill battle with skin lightening and its level of acceptability. And Thandi struggles a lot because she is ostracized at her school for being of a darker complexion. So she goes through these aspects of trying to lighten her skin and, you know, trying to figure out who she wants to be, where, you know, she does have family members who are telling her, like, you don't need to mess with that foolishness, but she's doing it because she thinks it'll help her fit in better at school, which is a very interesting aspect of the story. And Margot herself is, I think, almost puts herself on a pedestal, which makes her character very interesting because she says, I do all of this for my sister. This is for Thandi. I would do anything for her. I'm willing to give up anything. I'm willing to prostitute, because essentially that's what she does. I'm willing to prostitute myself out in order to make sure that you make it in this world, even if I don't make it in this world. And it's not, you kind of see where she does get that motive from, where she wants to do these things because she wants Thandi to do better. But then you can also see the aspects of Margot being power hungry and really just solely interested in what will make her look good and what will give her more money, and how at some point in the book she lets that get to her head and she's can be judgmental when she shouldn't be judgmental. I also found it particularly interesting when you see this dynamic between Margot, sexuality. Sorry, I don't know how I forgot this. Sexuality, sexual identity is also a huge thing that is discussed in this book. Whether it's Margot's sexuality in the sense of how she feels about herself as a woman and how she uses her body to manipulate men into doing things that she wants. And then also her sexual identity, because she is attracted and in a physical and emotional relationship with another woman. And Jamaica is not well known for its acceptance of individuals that don't identify as heterosexual. It is a huge, huge problem. The woman who is a lesbian, and it's never really out, it's never really stated whether she's bisexual or lesbian, but to me it felt more of her being a lesbian. She did end up getting married, but of course that means absolutely nothing. I think society was behind her getting married. She's called a witch, she's called the devil, she's called evil, and she's very ostracized. There's the possibility of her getting hurt, possibility of people wanting to attack her, people pulling pranks, people killing animals in front of her house. It's really, really sick. And you see this relationship between Margot and this woman and how that develops, but then also how Margot once again kind of shows her true colors towards the end of the book, and it makes you question whether she really was in love with this woman or if this was just all about money to her when it was all said and done. It's a very morally gray aspect of the book, and she's a very morally gray character in a lot of ways. And what I do want everybody to understand is that if you do pick up this book, there is no such thing as a happy ending. I won't tell you exactly what happens, but I think that the title of the book, Here Comes the Sun, and then the cover itself, like, that's a misnomer, because you think positivity, you think, oh my gosh, this is going to be a great book, everybody's going to figure their crap out. And it was so twisted towards the end of the book that I looked at my phone when I was listening to it, and I had like 5 minutes left, and I was like, oh no, there's got to be more of this book. This can't be where this book is ending. And that's where the book ended, and I was like, holy shit. These characters ended up with some fucked up lives. Like, it wasn't it wasn't positive at all. So I wasn't upset by it because I think a lot of times we look for positive endings in books, and that's not reality, and that's not what the author intends, and that's not where the characters are supposed to go, because their reality is not to be able to get away and live in this perfect positive world. So I did end up giving that one 4 out of 5 stars. Really great book. I would definitely recommend checking it out. I would definitely recommend listening to an audio. That is how I enjoyed it the best, was on audio. Very, very captivating book, and I will be doing a full written review on it. All right, y'all. So the next thing that I read was actually a comic book, and I read it on the recommendation of a coworker. And the title of this book is Bitterroot Volume 1, Family Business, and it's by David F. Walker, Chuck Brown, and Sanford Green. And this is a very complex comic book. It is often listed as horror, but I not only read the comic book, but I also read the after tidbits of it, and it's so much more than that. So I'm going to give you a description of what the comic book is first, and then I'll talk more about the complex aspects of it. So this comic book is about a family called the I cannot get their name right at all. It's the Sangure, I think that's how you say it, family. And they are living in 1920s America, and they specialize in getting rid of these monsters called Janu, and they are creatures that were once human, but they are corrupted souls. And these souls have been corrupted through hate and violence. And you don't really get that in the beginning. In the first couple of issues, you don't really understand. You just know that it's this family that's set on fighting them. And then you get to learn a little bit more about the origins. So it follows this family as they fight the Janu, and more issues start to happen. And they have to use root magic in order to cure and heal people. And it's very, very complex. So what you learn too is that Janu can only be white people. And it's taking place in the 1920s in Harlem, during the Harlem Renaissance, where there is a lot of racial tension and a lot of racial violence. And you'll see scenes where the Ku Klux Klan will try to lynch a black character, or you'll see race riots where police officers are brutalizing black characters, and they turn into these evil creatures that have to have their souls purified and cleansed in order to become human again. And it's a very interesting and dynamic way to take a look at racism and hate crimes. And then even amongst the black families, they also can become creatures that are not Janu, but there's something more powerful. And it almost reminded me of this whole aspect of like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, where Malcolm X was very peaceful protests. I don't even want to say pacified, but very peaceful. We don't use violence, non-violence protesting. Whereas Malcolm X was very much so eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth type of, they use, violence, we use violence back. And that came to me because you have the family who's very set on not harming the Janu, but actually using root magic to purify them and get them back to normal. So they don't use violence, they don't kill them. They just want to get them back to a place where they're not violent individuals. Whereas you have another group that are very, they embrace their own hatred. And in embracing their own hatred, they become these creatures that are more powerful than the Janu, but they're very set on, I'm not going to walk away in fear anymore. I'm going to kill as much as I can kill. And it's a very interesting dichotomy between the two. And there's a lot of historical references to the Red Summer of 1919, where there was a lot of race riots, a lot of people killed as a result of racial tension. And that was when there was a a huge Genu infestation, and a lot of lives were supposedly lost amongst that family because of how much hate and violence was going on. So a lot of people categorize this as horror, but really it's part of a new group of speculative, well, it's not really new, but more people becoming knowledgeable of this sector of speculative fiction that includes things like Afrofuturism, as I discussed last week with Binti, and this is considered ethnogothic, which is, and I'm going to give you an actual absolute definition. So it takes horrific supernatural spaces in storytelling and uses that trauma to unpack ideas around the horrors of racism and oppression. So that's why you have the Genu are actually humans, but they're racist and they're hateful and they're violent, and it has corrupted their soul, so they turn into these evil creatures. And it's such an interesting concept. I love the artwork. I definitely want to keep reading it. I haven't really read anything like this before. I found another recommendation of something that's like this, Box of Bones, which is another like ethnogothic type thing. What it looks at the African diaspora and also racism, but in the form of a comic that is not really 100% just in your face telling you this is what it's about, but it kind of subtly does it, and I really enjoy stuff like that. So I did end up giving this comic a 4 out of 5 stars. All right, y'all, so for this week, I am reading a couple of things. I'm still listening to the third summer of the Sisterhood, which is Girls in Pants. That one is not going to take me long. I think I'm already on the 3rd disc out of 6. So I'm about 50% way through that, and I listened to that on the way to and going from work. So hopefully I'll end up finishing that book this week. I am also still making my way through The Titan's Curse by Rick Riordan. I am currently on page, I think oh gosh, I don't even know what page I'm on because this is ridiculous. I think I'm somewhere in the hundreds. Somewhere in the hundreds in this book, and it's about maybe 215, 300 pages. About 300 pages, so hopefully I can make some progress on that. I also want to start Succubus Blues by Rochelle Mead. This one also is a little over 300 pages, and I'm hoping that I'm able to get to that one this week. This evening I'll be finishing a middle grade book called Charlie and Bone, The Bony Hand. I am almost finished with that one. I probably have like 75 pages left of this one, and this is one that I'm actually reading for review because I'm part of the blog tour, which starts tomorrow, so I have to post my review on my blog tomorrow. And I'm also listening to on my phone. So I always do 2 audiobooks at a time, one in the car, one that I listen to on my phone while I'm at work. The one that I'm listening to on my phone is the Dragonette Prophecy, which I've already read. This is a reread for me. I'm listening to it. It's the first in the Wing of Fire series. I wanted to continue the Wing of Fire series this year, but I was like, I need to reread the first book because I don't really remember much of anything. So I listen to that one whenever I get a chance, if I have some downtime. So that'll be the book that I listen to. But other than that, that's it for this week. You guys let me know in the comments below what you ended up reading this week. What are your plans for next week? And I look forward to hearing from everybody. Bye.